With that, I would love to introduce Maureen Harper. Maureen is Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at Falls Communications, and she is going to moderate a panel discussion with women leaders throughout Northeast Ohio. Thanks so much for your time.
Good morning. Thank you, Sandra and Jacob, for sharing your analysis and insights of lost opportunities. I'm going to ask my fellow panelists to now start their video and their microphones. I am Maureen Harper. I'm Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at Falls, a full-service marketing communications firm headquartered in Cleveland. I'm honored to be here and ready to take part in today's meaningful discussion. For the past 14 months, the pandemic and its impact on our lives has been the topic of many, many conversations. Today's conversation about the impact that the pandemic has had on women in the workforce is one that deserves deeper exploration. Today, we hope to share some additional insights and recommendations from business leaders to address the challenges that women in the workforce face, particularly as we begin to emerge from the pandemic. We have three main questions today regarding lost opportunities. First, how did we get here? Second, is the pandemic changing how we are attracting, retaining, and promoting women in the workforce? And finally, are these changes here to stay? I'm sure you'll have many more questions as well. Please use the Q&A feature and we will try to get to as many of your questions as possible. Before we dive into answering our questions, let's meet today's panelists. Lisa, will you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Maureen. I'm Lisa Aurilio. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Akron Children's Hospital.
Thank you, Lisa. Margaret?
Good morning. Margaret Trimmer, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for Delta Dental of Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you for being a sponsor of today's program. Rachel?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rachel. And Sarah?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I am a majority owner, CEO of Novagard, an industrial innovator of silicones, solutions, manufacturer in industrial Cleveland. I am also chair of the board of L Brands. So as a consequence, I'm deeply committed both to Northeast Ohio and to Columbus. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all for being here. And I'd love to just dig right in and start exploring lost opportunities. The first question I'd like to ask all of you, what data point or insight in the Lost Opportunities report was most striking to you?
I'm happy to jump in.
Thank you, Margaret.
I felt, to me, was actually quite shocking. The fact that 45% of the hours worked were women, but 2/3 of them were working poverty, which I found very, very distressing. And of course, the wage gap at 23% lower continues to reinforce that this is both an issue crossing social, corporate responsibility practices. And it's something that we all bear responsibility to fix. The second issue for me was around the fact that 4 times the number of women were impacted because of COVID relative to men. And my company, unfortunately, although we're 50-50 diverse, we only have 19.3% women, which is exactly in line with the chart you saw earlier, which says manufacturing businesses are 17%. And it's going to take a Herculean effort, as it has, for us to continue to increase that number, which we are very much committed to. And we are also very committed, obviously, to be much more flexible as we had to be during COVID. But I think it's the wage disparity, which highlights the working poverty. It's the actual number of women participating in the economy and the disparate impact that COVID had on that population.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Margaret, I think you had another point to share.
Yes, the one that really jumped out at me was the educational attainment did not reduce the difference in wages between men and women. And you would think that pursuing higher education, you'd get to a more equal playing field, and it just didn't make that difference. So that was, to me, quite shocking.
Good. Lisa?
I was going to reinforce what Margaret shared, that I've always been an advocate to girls and women to get your education, pursue that higher education. And this report doesn't really show that it pays off. And that's really disappointing.
Very good. Rachel, is there something you'd like to share?
Yes, I'd echo the sentiments of the other co-panelists. You know, it's interesting as we think about, for those that have started college, we think about those low-skilled workers and the attainment, and you wonder where the alignment is, because do they see the value in earning the education or going to that bachelor's degree plus if they're not being equitable in the pay or the flexibility that they need to meet the needs for themselves and their families?
Thank you. You know, so one of the things that struck me is, you know, some of the framing for this report is that we didn't just get here because of the pandemic. So what are some of the policies or societal norms that have created this environment that really allowed the pandemic to have such a disparate impact on women? Sarah, I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned the idea of paid leave for families.
I think a couple of things, and paid leave is important not just for the mothers, but also the fathers, and also for adoptive parents. And foster parents. I mean, I have a man working for me who has, I believe, 3 biological children and 5 or 6 foster children. They're all girls, 1 boy. They've come in and met with me. It's deep admiration, and it prompted me to think that we need to make sure that the kinds of commitment he's making to improving society and the welfare for all, we need to give that back to him. The other big issue for us that was highlighted was elder care. We have an aging workforce. And you don't even have to be aging. Anyone over the age of 45 has an aging parent. And I think COVID really brought that to the forefront. So we had to be flexible for both. So I think as businesses and as companies, it certainly tested our agility. I think prior to COVID, we were not as agile and not as flexible. Having had a long career in financial services, that was definitely the case. I personally did benefit years ago for taking a year off, but my reentry was not easy. So I'm very sensitive to what it takes for the horrible decision that a woman might have to make. Generally, it's her, to actually leave the workforce because the pressures at home are just too overwhelming. We have men, because of the kinds of company that we run, we also have men in that situation, so that we need to behave with the empathy that we all developed during COVID, I believe, that didn't exist perhaps as much before. We need to hang on to that with a ferocity that will carry us to be much, much better corporate partners for our people.
Good. Thank you. I think one of the other things that we've heard is, you know, often women working mothers kind of have the default role of being the caretaker or the educator. Margaret, do you find that to be true?
Oh, absolutely. And my previous career was in education. And so, of course, I saw it there that mom is the point person. Mom is the problem solver when it comes to school-related issues, by far in the majority. And we certainly saw that across Delta Dental as kids were sent home to learn online, and moms and dads maybe juggling the workspace, but still, you know, the child tends to, and I know certainly my children, where's mom? Where's mom if there's a problem? And so I think that the burden and the joy at times, because it's not a universally bad situation for moms, but the challenge was certainly upon moms to figure out in this online work environment how to help their kids, how to stabilize the learning environment for them. And we felt it, and obviously later in the discussion we'll get to some of the things we did to help them with that challenge.
Yeah, I know. Rachel?
Oh, I was going to say, I completely agree with that. And to be 100% transparent and say, when I found out my children were going to be virtual learners, I seriously thought, how in the world am I going to make this happen? And will I need to leave my role? And I'm just so thankful that, one, I had the option to even consider that conversation, but two, that I was with a company that allowed the flexibility for me to be able to manage both, as I still sit home with virtual learners today. And not only was I able to stay working, but I actually took a leap in my career during that time. I think it's important to note that it can be done, but we need the right tools and resources and support for our women in business to really help them get there and realize that they can do it.
And I think I would just add that I think the inequity in pay perpetuated more women leaving, because in the situations where there were two household incomes and hard decisions were made about childcare, the woman was usually the person that was the lower breadwinner, and therefore the decision was economical that, well, then you should be the one that changes your employment status. And so I think it was just the chicken or egg, but it really perpetuated itself.
I think that's right. And I know for myself, the demands kind of increased as we switched to working from home and educating our children from home as well. Thankfully, I too have a very flexible company that puts family first, and that helped us manage through this time. So I'd like to explore a little bit now about what we have done, you know, what our companies have done to help manage through the pandemic. What are the things that we can do now, and also taking that long-term look to address some of these societal issues that have created this environment? How has it impacted your companies, and what are you doing to adapt to these times? Lisa, would you like to start?
Sure. I think one of the primary things that we really are focusing on with our leaders and our management team is changing our mindset around how we lead and manage from an hours of work model to an outcome productivity, you did the work model, and understanding that all of the work from home doesn't need to be done at your desk without moving from X hour to X hour. And that if we can be more flexible and focus on the outcome and the product, our workforce is more engaged, and actually they're more productive. And we're starting to weave in that balance. And I think that that's been one of our greatest wins. There are opportunities for us to really educate our managers and leaders about how to do that, because it's a different way to manage. And so we're still growing and learning in that space.
Maureen, I'll jump in next, because we were presented with a unique challenge and opportunity during COVID, which was we were deemed an essential business. So we needed, of course, as a manufacturing of construction, silicone sealants, as well as those for military and electronics industries, we had to stay open. And we gravitated toward manufacturing medical foam for the face shields and the face masks during this time as well, to help out in the community. And it meant that our workers had to come in and work. We had to make them feel safe. They had to trust us that they would be safe. And we went from providing masks and gloves and taking temperatures to also sanitizing the workplace every week. The manufacturing facility, the offices are sanitized 3-4 times a day. We did flexibly rotate those jobs and those positions that we could in and out of the company for a period of 6 months. And I think that helped make us be more agile. I personally, because I was in New York, was stepped up Zoom, and I spoke to everybody every week. And then I spoke to them in small groups. And we spoke with enormous empathy about what it was like for each of us to live during this very, very tough time. And I was pleased to say we had very few cases, but in the beginning, the terror, honestly, and we all felt it. And I think admitting that it was a shared anxiety really helped us be much more empathetic. I personally now am much more visible. I used to have a birthday lunch. We now call it Lunch with Sarah. And I have at least lunch with 15 people every month. They're all mixed up. It's not done anymore by your birthday because we were unintentionally excluding people who don't celebrate birthdays, which wasn't correct. I hand out gift cards this whole week. We are so on fire business-wise. And by the way, we have 19 open positions, 16 in the manufacturing facility, 3 salaried, and I'm desperate for engineers and skilled manufacturers. And so our people are working 7 days a week, 24 hours. And so it's everything we can do to feed them lunch, breakfast, dinner. We're bringing in food trucks. It's not just, local food. And I'm handing out gift cards. And all I do is say, thank you, thank you. And you know what they say? They're so shocked. The other thing I did recently is I feel very strongly about everybody, if it's not a religious belief, that we get vaccinated. It's our role in the community to help us become safe. And so we brought the vaccination on site, gave everybody who's vaccinated a $25 gift card. So I had one of my employees, he came up to me, he said, why are you giving me $100? You just gave me $25. I said, to say thank you. And he said, well, I'm going to buy a pair of shoes. Now, we don't sometimes realize that in our workforces, we have many working poverty, men and women. And I can't tell you how it's changed me in terms of the personal impact this whole period has had on in sensitizing us to what's critical to keeping our workforce feeling like we are their family and we will do everything to support them, which I believe I am. But for all of you who have job networks out there, we are growing like gangbusters and I need people.
That's it. Definitely good to hear that you're growing, and we hope that all of our companies continue to grow and as we emerge from this pandemic. A couple of things that I'd love to follow up with the other panelists on. You raised the point of empathy, and then also the mental impact. So I know that some of our panelists have, within their companies, looked at ways to help employees stay healthy and manage through the pandemic and exhibit some of that empathy. Rachael, can you share a little bit about your work at Key?
Absolutely. And I think Sarah was spot on. That empathy and the word thank you go such a long way to employees. Just the feeling of that appreciation and understanding just cannot be stressed enough. Here at Key, we're so thankful that, our mission is to help communities thrive. And of course, that first priority is to our employees and making sure that they are safe, healthy, and well. And I'm excited to say that on top of the number of programs that we already had in terms of support for tutoring and child care services, senior care, there's also the focus that I thought was really neat that I also participate in, which are around some of our 15-minute sessions throughout the week, if you can participate, whether that's to boost energy, to reduce stress, stretching exercises, staying on track with your weight, and also a kitchen coach to teach you how to prepare healthy meals during this time. You know, of course, it's thrown everyone's schedule a little bit off of balance, but it's really getting back to us as individual people, not just as employees, and how best can we help them to stay healthy and well, not just for our companies, but for their family and for themselves.
Margaret?
We also understood the importance of whole health within our workforce, but also the workforce of our customers. And we partnered with the American Heart Association, driven by our relationships in Ohio with the Heart Association chapters there, and created a whole health handbook/playbook that we use with our employees to ensure that they just in snippets understand, if I do this, my whole health is better. If I do that, my whole health is better. And the emphasis was truly on mental health as much as heart health, as much as oral health. And so we were pretty excited to partner with the Heart Association. We were already moving in that direction, but certainly the pandemic underscored the importance of communicating those kinds of things to the workforce. And again, to our customers, because we have to add value, not just about teeth, but about creating healthy, smart, vibrant communities, because those are the kinds of communities that weather crises like these intensely. And I know, Maureen, you had also pointed out that one of the things we did around education and helping our parents sustain this online learning experience with their children, we pulled together 5 Michigan Teachers of the Year from years past and put them into town hall environments 3 times over, so that our staff had experts that they could talk to about, how do I do this? What do I expect? And what should I look for when it comes to my child's learning? Are they okay? You know, there's this saying that a mother is only as happy as her least happy child. And if you're watching your children struggle through learning and you don't know where to go, what to do, you're going to be a pretty miserable on-the-job worker. And so we tried to deflect that stress by pulling in experts, putting them right at the fingertips of our staff. Men and women, of course, took advantage of it. And then as a follow-up, we created a support group for our staff that was designed to help trade ideas and help them, you know, develop their own set of best practices around educating their children. It was a big success, perhaps not as big as I wished it had been, but I think much valued.
That type of flexibility and those additional resources, I think, have been proven to be so valuable, and some really unique ideas have come up out of this pandemic. I know our company has introduced ways to keep us connected while we still work remotely. So we have, you know, we've had several game nights, family game nights via Zoom, or company-sponsored pizza parties in our own homes. Lisa, I do think you shared some unique ways that you have helped your employees kind of manage through this time. I think there was a grocery store.
Sure. So thanks, Maureen, for reminding me about that. Being an essential business in healthcare, many of our staff who were coming to work were also struggling with, they didn't want additional or extra exposures if they could prevent it. So one of the things was, when you leave work to 12 or 14-hour day and you're leaving, and now you have to stop at the store and you have to drive all over looking for toilet paper. And so we established a grocery store right out of our cafeteria, just some essentials, including toilet paper, so that folks who needed could just swing down the cafeteria, pick up that bread and milk, and go directly home, eliminating one more or less stressor, as well as supporting our teams with, through our intranet connections, tutoring resources for families, family entertainment for the families when they were cooped up at home together, and really trying to just figure out, how do we bring some of those outside resources that they need to drive around to find right to them.
Mm-hmm. I think that those types of things have been absolutely critical as we've managed through this. Now we're at the point when we're starting to emerge and come out of the pandemic. Many companies are still working remotely if they're able to. Lisa and Sarah, definitely your teams have to be in place in person. But many companies are now starting to transition back to the office or begin to develop their policies to return to a more normal office environment. Where do you see us going from here? Perhaps in your experience or what your companies are working on and return to work policies, or what policies or these additional features do you hope stick around once the pandemic is in our rear view?
I would definitely say that I hope much of the learnings that we've had through this experience, and especially the empathy, stays, and that it's sustainable through our course of business. As we at Keys, of course, we have essential workers as well, making sure that we meet the needs of our communities through our branch network, but also determining where do we work best for our employees that can be flexible. What does that look like for them? We want to make sure that we continue our mentoring, that we create those relationships, that we continue to be intentional, but we also want to make sure that we continue to meet our employees where they are and what their needs might be. For me, it's still a struggle. We may be coming out of the pandemic, but as we proceed into the summer season, there are many summer camps and all that are still not available, that you may be waitlisted for it like me, where you're still trying to struggle to find that childcare that you need. So I think that although our vaccinations have increased tremendously, we still have a ways to go before I think folks feel comfortable. And then once you get there, now that we have had some flexibility, I think it definitely lightens the load a bit, whether you have children or caring for seniors, or just even for your own health, of being able to get to the gym more quickly right after work, or some of those other things, going to the grocery store, as Lisa mentioned. Having that flexibility, I think, will continue to be very important as we think about how we do business and setting standards of what becomes realistic. I think that idea of you get an email, which we probably all get hundreds a day, that I have to respond to this email within an hour or within a certain amount of time, is unrealistic. I think we have to normalize setting time expectations and parameters to say, hey, I got this email, I'll get back to you by Friday. If it's pressing, definitely let me know and I'll move it up to my priority list. We've got to be able to set our priorities and our expectations so that everything is not a fire drill, and that we're giving our employees that flexibility and autonomy of how they work best in order to make them the best in terms of what they're producing is at their best.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I'll jump in here, Maureen, because I agree with all the tools and the empathy and support that we've all given. That is definitively has to stay for all of us. But I also use this opportunity to address pay disparity and the fact that as a company, it's very frustrating to me as woman owner that I only have 19.3% women.
That's right.
And only 10% of them are salary, the remainder are hourly exempt. And with our 19 open positions, I need 14 of them to be filled by women, which means we're going to have to push women with technical backgrounds into some of our jobs on the plant floor that are more controls oriented, not heavy lifting, but we are automating a lot of that. But we did address pay disparity twice. And part of it was catalyzed because as we came out of our business really came out, not the world came out of COVID, but in July, we had to hire tremendous numbers of people, both at the senior, middle, and junior ranks. And it made us relook at the groupings of our employees. And it became obvious that just like the study, a number of our women had sunk. And why was that? Because we hadn't purposely hired as many women as we should have, who were equally qualified into some of these more salaried positions. So that caused me to relook at the grades and make sure that everybody was grouped appropriately. We gave a number of women and some men, in cases, significant increases, both in October when I reinstated the pay from April increase, as well as during this past April increase in bonus season. And I feel that it is our absolute responsibility to make sure that we close that gap ourselves. We're the only ones who can do that. I also feel that in order for me to get to a company where we're 50-50 diverse on race lines, we need to be there on gender lines. And I need more women who come to me from engineering. I just did hire a young, wonderful engineer from Case Western, where she has a master's and came to us with some experience. I need more of them. I need more R&D scientists. I need manufacturing and research to have the glamour that some of these other industries have. That's right. And STEM, to me, is fundamental to that. So whatever we can do, and I say that to all of you, to help you in promoting that at a more junior level, we will do that, because we do take in young students at the basically college freshman, sophomore level for internships. Good. But it's, you know, we're not a sexy industry, but we are when you get inside. And I think we have to help young women realize that being successful in these other roles will help them navigate these terrible times like we had with COVID. And someone reminded me 9/11, where people are emotionally impacted. So get them to out of the service industry and more into industries that have a long-term staying power.
And I thank you for that, Sarah. I do think that speaks to the long-term challenge and the goals that we all have to really address the pipeline issue, encourage and mentor young women to enter the fields that, you know, traditionally we have not gone into. I do now want to pause. I do think we have a few questions that have come up from the audience. Sandra, can you assist?
Yeah, hi, Maureen. I think everybody can hear me now.
Thank you.
Before we move on to, we have a couple questions in the Q&A. I just wanted to give one of the first questions a little bit more time. If anybody wanted to touch on how far behind the U.S. is in paid parental leave, and what you all think can be done to fix it and keep up with the time. I know we talked about some paid parental leave and childcare issues, but feel free to expand on any of that if you would like.
Sure. Well, I can share that the United States ranks either at the bottom or near the bottom internationally for paid parental leave. We are the only developed or wealthy nation that does not mandate federally paid parental leave when children are born or when you adopt. And I do think that is one of the roadblocks that we have. Traditionally, women are the caretakers. Of course, we have some maternity leave, but most often that's company by company, and it is not, kind of equally applied across the board, and definitely does not give enough time for women to heal, recover, bond with their children, and really manage both family and work life. I see some head nods from the panelists. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I would like to share two thoughts. One, if you kind of similar to a mother, if her least happy child, right? If in a community, your children are not well today, your future is in jeopardy. And so really it's a two-pronged. Today you got a problem and tomorrow you've got a problem. So taking care of our parents so they can take care of their children is an investment in our economic well-being down the road. And I don't know that employers necessarily look at it that way. The other point, and I don't know that we think about it until we're there, but taking care of and bonding with your child in the beginning requires time and requires support. But there are other points on your children's life that need your attention. And there are a lot of theories that we should spend time at the beginning and then in adolescence. because there is no worse time in a child's life than the hours between 3 and 6 p.m. when they are 13, 14, 15, and 16. That's when most teen pregnancies are occurring. That is when they're unsupervised at home. And so if you think it's a done deal to bond with your child for 6 weeks when they're born, think again. And so how might employers look at the spectrum and the continuum of child rearing and needs that are incumbent in that process?
I think the other thing, Margaret, everything you said I agree with, and Maureen, the other thing is we absolutely have to have a federal provision, in my point of view, to help fund this. It can't be all on the shoulders of companies, especially mid-sized businesses. Small businesses can't afford it. But the other issue is we have got to provide daycare and nursery care and pre-K before kindergarten. I mean, you can't just be home, as you're saying, Margaret, for 6, 8 weeks and then bounce off and wonder they can't afford to. So no wonder there's so many women living at poverty, because every time they re-enter the workforce, it's stressful. And so they're forced to take a job that may pay them less each progressive time. So they're moving down the scale, not up the scale. So we have an obligation as a society to help look after our own. And that goes from cradle all the way through elder grave. I agree with you.
Well, and we really do have like this double standard too, because if a mom takes the time out of work to do what her children need, that is okay, fine, we're happy you're doing that. If you don't do that, we're not happy you're doing it because we're really not supporting you. But if you don't do it and your child misbehaves, then what kind of a parent are you? You know, so a mom is often caught in a really horrible catch-22.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I also think, too, that it's a broader issue, as Sarah mentioned, too, as we think about, we're on the heels of the lowest birth rate since 1979. If we think we have a problem getting skilled labor now, imagine what's coming if we continue to decline. But, you know, there are a number of reasons of why the birth rate is declining, but absolutely having that support from employers as well as programs to help all feed into that. And the more that we can do that, the more appealing it becomes for families to continue to have more children. Because right now it continues to be difficult. And the question becomes, should I do this? Should I not? And we're seeing the effects of that. And it will only get worse if we don't put our feet in the sand and do something about it.
Hi, yeah, we have one other question. We have actually many questions in the pipeline, and just to mention, if we do not get to some of the later questions, research team will reach out to answer some of those questions. How did you ladies advance in your careers to be voices of leadership when it is clear that women are underrepresented as leaders in all of your respective roles?
Grit.
That's right.
You know, I don't know. I don't mean to be cheeky, but honestly, I mean, we all obviously have staying power. And I think you make sacrifice and you feel a lot of guilt. But at the end of the day, you got to have grit and strength and agility and be all those things that they describe that women do, because we all do them all the time and do what we do well. And I would say the added responsibility for all of us now, of course, as leaders of our respective businesses, is to make sure that we're developing men and women, not just women, but men and women, to have all these characteristics and more, and to work together to support each other. And I'm all in favor of everyone saying, you look great today, or you look a little tired, is something going on? Nothing wrong in that. It shows a level of empathy and support that I think somehow we've lost in the workplace. So if anything, I'd say grab it and get it back and help each other along the way. And the more you help people, your teammates, subordinates, Even seniors, leaders need feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Will be more successful and all feel more supported.
That's right.
Sarah,
yeah, I would agree with that, Sarah.
Margaret Trimmer. And I can't underscore enough the importance of grit, perseverance, tenacity, all of those really true skill sets. But I also believe that mentoring, and for us, I bet every one of us had a mentor, a guide, somebody that we leaned in and said, how did you do it before me? You know, standing on the shoulders of the great women and leaders ahead of us, before us. But I also go back to a little bit of terror and fear also drove me to just push through the obstacles. I was raised by a dad who said, nobody is ever going to take care of you. You've got to take care of yourself. And so that determination, but driven by sheer terror.
Yeah, Rachel?
And I have to say, Key, very humble to be on Diversity Inc. top 50 list for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a core part of our culture. 59% of our workforce are women, and 46% are in that first level, mid-level managers, and we have 33% of our executive leadership, like myself, are women. So we are not exactly where we want to be, but we are so thankful for the strides that we've made. And I have to say, like Margaret, investing in yourself, in mentorship, and that scariness that you get sometimes, if it doesn't scare you a little bit, then maybe that's not the thing for you. Are you challenging yourself enough? And not to make decisions when your plate is already full and overwhelmed. It's hard to picture what you're going to do next or really dreaming big enough if you're not taking care of yourself. We talk so much about the health and wellness and investing in yourself, and all of that plays a part in it. You may not be 100% every single day, but it's so important to have a core group of folks and mentors and sponsors around you that are feeding into you so that you can build that confidence and resilience so that when opportunities are presented or you do have a goal, that you go after it 1,000%.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. I would reinforce mentorship and sponsorship, and that as women leaders, there's a fine line and a difference between both. We can give tuition reimbursement to everyone and say, well, everyone has an equal chance to use it, go use it. But the true sponsorship comes in when you, as the leader, as the manager, as the boss, says, I'm going to give you the tuition reimbursement, but I'm going to work around your schedule. I'm going to make it flexible so you can get to class. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to give you projects that align with your schoolwork so you're not doing double work. And having that kind of intentional sponsorship makes a key difference above and beyond the mentorship. And I think as women leaders, we all are part of perpetuating that sponsorship and helping it grow.
Good, thank you. I know we have several questions left and just a few more moments to share some insights. Sandra?
Yes, great panel today, ladies. Our last question will be, how can we create a stronger bridge between our great colleges, universities, and technical schools in Ohio to our companies in Northeast Ohio?
So one of the programs that we've adopted here at the hospital is called Career Launch, where we are being intentional about growing our own and taking our entry-level service positions, whether that's dietary or environmental services, and then partnering with a technical community college to, again, use that tuition reimbursement, but work their work schedule around classes so that we intentionally grow them into the nurses that we need, the physical therapists that we need, and really partnering with the schools to either bring the program and classes on site or partnering so that their offerings are offered in hours that balance against the work demand. So I think that's one example of how we can really marry education and the work sector.
And I would jump in and say it's not just about post-secondary. The relationships really ought to begin in middle and high school. If you have more of a of a K-16 approach. It becomes far more seamless what those pathways look like, what the relationships from one institution to the next are. And the more that employers are opening doors for career exploration for those high school kids, the more the relationship with college is going to change as well. I commend Team NEO for the relationships they have developed in the K-12 arena with junior achievement, YOU, et cetera. I think that that's an important page turner.
Good, thank you. Well, I think that's the time that we have for our discussion today. Margaret, Rachel, Sarah, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights with us. With leadership like yours, I'm confident we can continue to have this important conversation as a region and change the dynamics for women in the workforce.
Thanks to our panelists for joining us today and for your continued work in the community. I'd also like to thank all of you for your time today. I hope that this program provided you with new insights on working women's gains, as well as the inequities and barriers that continue to hold women back from full labor force participation, even right here in the Northeast Ohio region. Most importantly, I hope you walk away from today with some action items to recognize gender inequality or inequality of any kind wherever it exists, and to use your personal influence to promote equal advancement for all in the Northeast Ohio region. The full Lost Opportunities Report will be sent as a follow-up to this meeting. You can also find our 2020 Aligning Opportunities Report and Misaligned Opportunities Report at teamneo.org. Thank you.